I've been absolutely stunned by just how self-destructive, in my opinion, not yours, the Republican Party has been by the people that they put up to run statewide races in swing states. And there is not a state that's more of a swing state now than Arizona. And my God, the people who look like they're lining up to win are all in for the Trump conspiracy theories. Take us through take us through those races and all the races we're going to see
Take
today.
us to Crazy Town.
Yeah, well, what you're outlining there is the Democrats' hope here in the face of a climate that otherwise, if you just look at Joe Biden's approval rating, state of the economy, and the history of how midterm elections go for White House parties, Democrats are hoping what you just outlined will be a major mitigating factor that would allow them to defy history and to keep the Senate. Let's focus on the Senate here right now, because right now it is 50-50 in the Senate. And so basically you're looking at what I think the potential battleground looks like for the Senate, as shaded by the party that now controls these seats that are all up this November. Republicans just need a net gain of one seat and they get control. And again, just given the environment, everything we're talking about, you would think, looking at this map, that one seat wouldn't be too hard to come by. So right away, you take a look at it here. What would the two most likely options be for Republicans? Well, the two Democratic-held seats that were the closest in the 2020 election were Georgia and Arizona. They both went for Biden in 2020. But remember, about 11,000 votes was Biden's margin in Georgia, inside of 10,000 votes in Arizona. Razor-thin margins for Joe Biden, meaning coming into a midterm like this, no margin for error for Democrats. But like you mentioned, the polling for Republicans has been concerning so far when you look at Herschel Walker in that Senate race. Now, again, Republicans will tell you, hey, this will end up being, in their view, a wave year. In wave years, all of the races end up breaking, towards the opposition party at the very end of the cycle. Herschel Walker will get carried by the wave. I think that's what Republicans are counting on. What Democrats are counting on, though, is that Walker in Georgia and potentially, you say Blake Masters, the polling shows him with a clear lead in this Republican Senate primary in Arizona tomorrow. Potentially Blake Masters in Arizona could put both of those otherwise on paper clear pickup opportunities for Republicans at risk. And then you compound it. You were mentioning the name of Mehmet Oz in Pennsylvania. Again, Oz, the Republican Senate nominee in Pennsylvania. The polling has also been very concerning for Republicans when it comes to Oz, when it comes to his standing head-to-head with the Democrat John Fetterman, when it comes to his approval, favorable, unfavorable number with voters, very high unfavorable numbers. So if you just looked at this map and you didn't know who was running in these states, you would say, hey, Pennsylvania now is a Republican-held Senate seat. Pat Toomey's not running. Yeah, maybe Democrats have a chance of picking up Pennsylvania, but all Republicans got to do is win Georgia or Arizona, and there's their net gain of one. But then you start looking at the individual dynamics in this race, and Georgia may be a tough pull for Republicans. Arizona may be as well. We have Colorado on the map. Colorado's the kind that could come into play. Republicans have nominated a much more moderate candidate there, but Colorado's much more Democratic than Arizona or Georgia. So it starts to get more complicated, at least from this vantage point. We're just inside of 100 days from Election Day. When you look at the individual dynamics in the Senate race, you can start to see a scenario where Democrats keep the Senate. When you take the individual dynamics out of it and you just think about the basic ingredients of the midterm climate, you still do see the makings there potentially of a Republican wave. So two things are in tension with each other here, I think.
Yeah, Steve, I'd be the last to suggest that polling in July makes any difference. It does give you a snapshot for that time. We'll see what happens in the fall. I'm thinking right now, especially of Ohio, where you actually have Tim Ryan doing extremely well against J.D. Vance. I suspect that's a race that's going to end up, we're going to be staying up late in the night, most likely, to see who wins that race. But I just want to circle back. I know it's not a Pennsylvania day, but you just outlined something some numbers that I read and I found shocking. I said, okay, this is going to be hard for any candidate to get around. Dr. Oz's negatives in Pennsylvania are off the charts. I mean, I don't know how any candidate gets around that. Would you suggest that more so than Herschel Walker, more so than the former venture capitalist who loved Silicon Valley in San Francisco, would you suggest Dr. Oz probably has the biggest hill to climb between now and Election Day of all the Republican candidates?
I think probably true. And again, when you look at the 2020 results in these states, we said Arizona inside of 10,000 votes for Biden, Georgia about 11,000 vote victory margin for Joe Biden. When you got to Pennsylvania, Biden's margin was stronger. You're looking at about 2.5 points for Biden in Pennsylvania. So it's also a little bit more Democratic, less Republican than these other states. So I think that makes it a steeper hill to climb. I think what Democrats are hoping here is Oz's weakness. The other thing you hear from Democrats has the Roe decision motivated some of their Democratic-leaning female voters? If it has motivated them to get interested in the midterm elections, we'll see that in those Philadelphia suburbs that were so decisive in 2020 as well in that state. Is that a dynamic to look for as well? But yeah, you think back to that Republican primary in Pennsylvania. It took like 3 weeks to resolve. Mehmet Oz finally won the thing. I think the official margin was about 900 votes. The candidate he beat out there was the one that the Republican establishment was very much hoping would win, David McCormick. They thought he had a much better chance in the general election than Oz, but Oz did carry that Donald Trump endorsement. We've talked about Trump endorsement having a mixed record, 900 vote margin in that Republican primary. I don't think Oz gets that 900 vote margin without Trump, and that is who Republicans now have to rely on in Pennsylvania. And again, what they're relying on, I think, is less Oz and more the national climate. And they're just hoping that when you get to October and November, voters are in a mood to say, I don't care who the Republican candidate is. I want to vote against Biden. I want to vote against the Democrats.
So Oz losing by 11 points already there. What a huge difference it would have made if McCormick had actually won the nomination. I mean, I know him. But I'd be saying it even if I didn't know him, because he would be polling very well. Let's talk. You brought up abortion. Let's talk about Kansas. Obviously, a huge vote there that a lot of people are going to be looking at to see how much impact Roe being overturned after almost 50 years has, especially in those Kansas City suburbs. How motivated will people be in the suburbs to go out and vote? Because the Supreme Court overturned the right to privacy in Roe.
Yeah, so this is interesting. What's on the ballot in Kansas tomorrow is it would add language to the state constitution that says the state constitution does not protect the right to abortion. So if the referendum passes in Kansas tomorrow, what it would open the door to happening is the state legislature, controlled by Republicans, potentially moving to enact strict restrictions, maybe an outright ban on abortion if a Republican governor were to get elected this fall, potentially to sign those laws into effect. So that's what's on the ballot tomorrow in Kansas. We have seen before this Supreme Court decision this year, basically the exact same referendum on the ballot in 4 states. It was on the ballot in West Virginia, Tennessee, Alabama, and Louisiana, all within the last 8 years. It passed in all of those states, although I will say it was close when it was on the ballot in West Virginia. It was just a couple points, and there has been some polling in Kansas. We think of Kansas as a deeply red state, and obviously it is in most ways, but there's been polling in Kansas that suggests this could be a close race, this referendum tomorrow. And I think that issue that you're raising about specifically, you talk about like Johnson County, the suburbs on the Kansas side, the Kansas City metro area. That's an area that's trended towards the Democrats. That's an area that has a lot of those kinds of voters who I think are more moderate to liberal on social issues. Be interesting to see if they are motivated to turn out in large numbers by this tomorrow. If they were, and if this referendum were to fail in Kansas tomorrow on the strength of that kind of vote, I think that could be some kind of potential portent for November as well.